Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video I'm going to do a build showcase on a hardwired explosive build, as that is a very mechanic heavy build that is centered around a rotation, which is common in quite other games, MMOs mostly, where you have classes based around rotation. This is actually somewhat of that in Division 2 build. As always, I will be using my build collection and a build picture from there, actually, as I do not have variants of it, so we'll be mostly discussing one, and that is specifically 2.09 hardwired explosives, as it is highlighted there. And as always, I will also link to the collection and to the build that I'll be showing today down in the description below. And as always with these build showcases, it will be split into two chapters. In the first chapter, I'm going to discuss the build, how I've put mine together, and how the stats that I've chosen for it and why it is that way. And also, I will be going briefly into some of the tactics at the range for it, as this build doesn't really benefit from showing any calculations for it. So instead, I'll be showing the main rotation of it in the target range, as that may make it a lot more clearer and easier to talk about it instead of trying to single it out in some gameplay. And then, yeah, a second chapter of gameplay where I will, as always, live narrate while I'm playing and talk about what I'm doing, the reasons why I'm doing some of the stuff, and how I apply this rotation in gameplay, and try to give you some insights in how to play it, basically. If we jump into the build itself, as I have it prepared here, this is the layout that I prefer to have for it, as this is the variant, the only variant of hardware that I keep around, as most of the other variants do not have the mechanics of what this layout will have. And I really like playing this, as I've said before, again, about its rotation, to try to min-max out its rotation, to try to get the most out of this specific build layout. To discuss the layout, we have 4 pieces of hardwired. In this case, we're going mask, backpack, knee pads, holster, and that is those are the 4 pieces that I would recommend having the hardwired pieces on, and that is to let us have a btsu glove in the glove slot to keep that glove slot free. And we also want to have a high-end chest instead of the hardware chest, as the hardware chest talent isn't great. So instead we will have this China light piece with glass cannon. To discuss first the hardware set. The hardware sets at the 2-piece and the 3-piece we gain some stats. We mostly only really care about the skill damage for this build. But at the 4-piece we gain the main mechanic of hardwired, as that is this feedback loop. And what this feedback loop is whenever you use or cancel a skill, your other skill cooldown is automatically reduced by 30 seconds. So in the case of our Seeker, which is our main skill that we'll be using, it's below 30 seconds, so we'll instantly get it back. But even if it was a little bit over 30 seconds, it would have cooldowned a little bit already, and yeah, it basically eats up 30 seconds of the cooldown whenever you trigger it. And yeah, when we trigger it as well, when we reduce that cooldown, we also gain a little bit of skill damage and repair by 10% for 20 seconds, which is minor. And this feedback loop can occur once every 20 seconds, as it states here. That is with a 4-piece, and we are specifically using the backpack talent from hardwired, and that's why we also have a hardwired backpack, to take that 20 seconds down to 10 seconds. So what this in effect means is that we are every 10 seconds, we can cancel or use a skill, which is our hive, to gain our Seeker, as that will reset basically the cooldown of the other skill. What we will not be doing is actually using the mechanic of hardware for hive, as whenever you use the Seekers, this cooldown it will not eat up or give you back 30 seconds worth of charges for the stinger. It will give you 1 charge back. So the stinger itself is actually used to get the Seeker back, and the Seeker does not give you your hive back, really. And that is why we're using that second piece here, which is this btsu dataglove, which I'll be calling btsu gloves. This has multiple mechanics that apply to the hive. First off, we will be getting a skill haste, and we're using the hardwired mechanics to get our seeker into a very low cooldown, and we're using the btsu gloves to get our hive recharging quite quickly. But also, more importantly, we're also using this btsu for its what I call supercharge. And the supercharge is actually so whenever we detonate our hive, so when we deconstruct it while it's out, we gain an overcharge for 15 seconds. And the special of this variant of this overcharge, so only with the btsu gloves, is that if you do it at skill tier 6, which we are a full-blooded skill build, we are full 6 skill tiers, it will overcharge all of your allies. And all allies means in this case that it's also, for instance, in Countdown or in Raids, it's both groups, it's both subgroups. But even in a normal group, it's your entire group. So all of your allies gain an overcharge as well. And that makes it very strong. And that's also why we differentiate with it, where I usually call it a supercharge, and that's the callout that usually goes out with it over comms when we use it, and that lets our allies know that they can use our skills, both because they will have this refreshes a cooldown as well, even though that will not matter for us here, because as long as the hardwired is off cooldown, which is a much shorter cooldown, that will already reset our skills anyway. But this will reset all of our ally skills, so we can reset hives and such, or revive hives for our allies, and give them overcharged skills for 15 seconds as well. And that is very strong alongside, for instance, Eclipse. And this build really plays well alongside of an Eclipse, because I will give them overcharge. They will keep targets CC'd and on fire where they cannot really roll well, and that will let my seekers be a lot more effective. For our last piece, we have a China Light piece, and we are specifically using it for this brand bonus of explosive damage. One thing I want to make note of here is that explosive damage does not apply to the Stinger Hive. The Stinger Hive is an explosive skill. It does apply a yellow damage in the HUD when you have damage numbers on, and it does apply bleed as well as all explosive skills do, but it does not benefit from explosive damage, and this is just a quirk from how it was changed from year 1 into Warlords, or as it got changed from a skill damage skill, as for instance the Oxy is, into an explosive skill, but it either for balancing reasons or they forgot, did not gain the ability to benefit from explosive damage. I just want you to be aware of that. But we're getting this explosive damage here, and also from our specialization, and that's applying to our Seeker, and we're just biting the bullet on the Hive. But we're using the Hive for the mechanics together with the btsu and the hardwired, and then the Seekers is just our main damage dealer, basically. If we jump over to the build picture that I've prepared, or that is in my collection for this build, you will see that the stat-wise, every piece has skill damage, and wherever else I have a mod slot or a secondary attribute, it's skill haste. I'll discuss here actually one of the variants, and I might actually show this for one of the gameplay runs, is to, instead of the skill haste, have it all be repair skills together with a restorer hive, a healing hive. And that is actually one of the variants that kind of works well, as that way you heal your allies a little bit. It is a decently strong hive, as it is skill tier 6, and it will have quite a few repair skills, as we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 repair skills together with 30 from the gear set as well. And that can be actually decent enough healer, but I prefer the offensive variant as I have it here. But it is quite easy to actually swap over to that one, as in this case I will basically just put in a restorer hive, a repair hive, and together with 3 repair skill mods, and that will basically variant it out towards that one. But this is the layout that I will be showing first, and this is that every piece has skill damage, and this is a very easy build to put together, as hardwired is craftable if you actually boost the character and account share blueprints, or you're just boosted character. Then you will have access, I believe, to both the blueprints, and you will get all the parts for it, the hardware components parts, enough to quickly put this build together. But even if you go out and farm for it, it is very easy, as it is a yellow skill to your gear set. It has 1 stat, so as long as you have skill damage already in your library, any piece you find, you just put the skill damage on and you have it. And even without having this, having it be, and it's at its optimal setup with this China light piece and such, it can still be very effective. So it can be a very easy build to put together. And actually, even when I first made my second account, this is actually the build style kind of, but instead I think I went with a Hana U piece and a Wyvern piece just for ease. Together with the 4 other pieces of hardware as my first build, to just quickly put something together and just start to run it, as I had access, of course, to all the skills as well and such. And then, yeah, it's a very easy and fast build to put together. So it comes actually highly recommended for that, to have something easy to put together. And of course, for more advanced players, you will have all of these parts likely lying around, and you can just slam something together. And even if you don't have this chest specifically, you will likely have a Wyvern chest for drone builds or something, if you are a player that has played for a while, and you can just use that until you find this one, or just to get a taste of this build, basically. If we jump back into the game, the skills that we'll be using are basically locked into the Stinger, Hive, and the Seeker. The Seeker is our primary damage dealer, basically, and our Hive is very much locked into having the btsu mechanics. And I'll be making heavy use of that, so I want to have both of those mechanics. So I will have a Hive, I will have a Seeker. And, well, you can variant it out by not having the btsu gloves and having, for instance, an explosive sticky instead, or a mortar or something that you deploy and then pick back up and such. I really like this variant quite a lot, so I'll be showing it here. But just so you know, there are a lot of ways to variant this build out, as I already also discussed with the repair skill variant. So yeah, you can play around with it quite a lot, but I just specifically want to show you this variant for today. For the weapons, I will be maining this shotgun, and I'll be using shotguns again in the same way as for Eclipse, as the damage to armor does apply to both of our explosives, to both the Stinger and the Seeker. So both of the skills are explosives, and they do benefit from damage to armor. They do not benefit from damage to targets out of cover or damage to health. So shotguns become the easy choice, as they do have that 12%, where any other weapon type would have 6%. Even though we could have an AR with the perfect in-sync AR, and that is also a viable option here. But I like having this shotgun, as I can just basically blind fire, and I will likely get the trigger of in-sync off of it. The other option that you have as well is to have a capacitor, as that also has that 12% damage to armor. But of course, the capacitor also has this mechanic of for 40 shots hit on enemies, you gain 60 skill damage, which is double basically what we get off normal in-sync, as we have it there on the shotgun. But the downside of it is you have to actually expose yourself and be actively playing with the weapon to get those 40 shots out. And that's not something that I'm confident in doing. I would much rather be focusing on getting the skills out as much as possible, focusing on the timings of those, and then just sneaking in a few in-sync shots, as that is just one shot. I can just blind fire towards a group of enemies, and especially with a shotgun, I will likely trigger an in-sync, where with this one, I would actually have to actively play the weapon quite a bit for one magazine to get at least one magazine to get that 60 skill damage out of it. And we're also glass, so I don't want to expose myself that much. In this case, for some reason, I have a double barrel sawed-off. A double barrel sawed-off wouldn't actually be a bad choice here, but instead I would go actually with in-sync. For in cases where there is Pistolero is active, and that way you can still trigger your in-sync that way. But I do know that I have a pistol with in-sync on this character, so this is likely what I will swap to when I have that. But you can also, future perfect is an option, as you can use that for an overcharge, but this build will actually overcharge quite easily and effectively with the hive and the btsu gloves. So this is actually not a really good choice on my part, but a double barrel with in-sync, but also it's the side weapon, so put whatever you like having there. Something with in-sync can be handy for pistolero directive as the only recommendation I would give here. A sledgehammer would also actually be an option, as you can throw a grenade at once in a while. The specialization, we are basically locked into having the demolitionist, as it gives us another 10% to our explosive damage, which is quite strong, as explosive damage in the same vein as damage to armor or damage to targets that have cover for red builds is a separate multiplier, so it increases it by close to the amounts that it states. So here we only have 25 from 2 sources, where any other skill damage that we would add in here would already have diminishing returns by quite a lot, as we have both from the set, we have both, and all of the stats bonuses that we have, giving quite strong diminishing returns on skill damage. And so this China Light piece is basically very much recommended, especially with glass cannon. And yeah, the Demolitionist is also very much recommended. As also some of the other things that it gives us is that negation of 1 explosion every minute as one of its perks is actually quite strong, as sometimes your seekers will follow a rusher that is rushing for your face and will blow you up if you were, for instance, a technician or something. But because you can negate 1 per minute, it is actually quite handy. And also for Black Tusk, this build will very much set up in a position and just start doing its rotation. So especially for something like the Black Tusk grenade launchers, those can be very annoying for you, but here you can negate 1 because you are set up in a position and they will try to like lob at you, and you will be focused on your skills, so you might not be paying that much attention to them, and suddenly you will get hit by an explosive, but at least you can negate 1 and then get out of that position knowing that you are under fire. For the rest, the grenade launcher, the multi-grenade launcher that you get is also quite strong here, as we will be killing a lot with our explosives, meaning that we will get a lot of ammo for our multi-grenade launcher, and we will actually be using this for our for moments to clean out a wave. As especially one of the downsides of this build is that neither of the skills really go over boundaries of doors. So when enemies spawn inside of that room behind the door, your skills will not cross the boundary of that door in almost all cases. There's only a few exceptions over all of the missions, maybe less than 10 likely doors where your seekers will go into them, into spawn doors. So that means that usually you have to wait for enemies to come out, but your grenade launcher does not have that. You can actually fire into the room they are spawning in with your grenade launcher. So in some cases, you will use that. Having talked about this build for this long, I will actually now take you into the range, where I will show its rotation, and we will discuss basically what we are trying to achieve with the layout as it is here. So we'll see you there in a second. And to show that rotation, first I'm going to explain what is going to happen, as just to make it even clearer. I am going to toss out my seekers. Once the seekers explode, so once they hit the ground, they spread out, go after targets and explode. That is when their cooldown becomes available again. So once every charge has exploded, the cooldown is available to us again. What we'll do here is toss out our first seeker. That will not trigger feedback loop yet because our hive will not be on cooldown, so we will not be triggering this yet. So we're easily saving it, and that we will trigger that feedback loop once we toss out our first hive. So once that hive goes out, and then when the hive actually hits the ground and actually becomes a physical object in the ground, so once it actually is deployed and starts hitting stuff, that is when the trigger can happen. So you can actually toss it out a few seconds before the hardwired cooldown is off, is completely off its cooldown. So you can actually time it pretty well. And what that will do then is give us our second seeker. We toss out our second seeker. Once it explodes, we will try to time it in a way that we deconstruct our hive to coincide close to that. Our hardwired will not be off cooldown at that point yet, because we've used it for that second set of seekers. So what will happen instead is actually we will get a refresh from the btsu glove. So this refreshes our skills cooldown and puts us into overcharge. So using that supercharge, the third seeker that we then get from the btsu then is an overcharged seeker. We toss that out. We wait really briefly for the cooldown of hardwired to elapse to the point that we can toss out our hive again. We will toss out our hive in that time, and because hardwired is 10 seconds and our overcharge is 15 seconds, if we time it decently well, we will get a fourth seeker, and that seeker will also be overcharged. So we get two normal seekers, a full hive, and two overcharged seekers in a 20-second-ish window, and that is of course very strong. From that moment on, we are then we no longer have the btsu available to us for 2 minutes, and what we will do then is go into a normal rotation of tossing out or deconstructing the hive every 10 seconds to get another seeker, and we will keep doing that till everything is dead and we can go home victorious. And in between all that, we will try to trigger in sync as well. And as you can now imagine with how I've explained this, this can be quite challenging. And I will now attempt to show you it. Just to make a note here as well, I've of course disabled the skill haste for range, as otherwise that would make it a little bit easier. If I mistime something, then the skill haste of the range would hide it a little bit. So of course I've turned that off. So what I'm going to do here is actually do the rotation and talk about it while I'm doing it. So what I'm going to do is toss out my seeker, trigger in sync. While it is going after targets, I'm going to toss out my hive. This will trigger the feedback loop. I will get a seeker back again. I will toss that out. Once it actually hits targets, I will deconstruct my hive. This will give me a supercharge and my third overcharged seeker. Once that goes out, I will hit it. I will check that the hive when I'm tossing it is not on cooldown of hardwired, and then the fourth seeker went out, where together with still being overcharged by the btsu. Here I'm deconstructing my hive to trigger to have another seeker again, and so from this point on we are on a 10-second rotation where either I put out my hive or deconstruct it to get my seeker back. So there I'm deconstructing it to get it back. Seeker goes out again. And the cooldown of hardwired is that white one that you see, the hardwired logo, and the other one, the one that you see that is the orange one, that is actually the damage buff. So you want to make sure that you're watching the right one, the white one. So whenever that is getting low, I will toss out my hive. Once it hits the ground, it will trigger that feedback loop. Once it actually deploys, I will get my seeker back. And this is the rotation from here on. So I'm going to basically every time wait or put my hive in a position, get a little bit of damage out with my hive, and then get a seeker out. And of course, at that starting part, we got a lot of burst damage in that when we also had the btsu available. But even here, we're actually doing decent damage. And one thing, yeah, of course, that you would want to do, and I'm forgetting here, is to trigger in sync, especially right before the seekers hit. So whenever I toss out my seekers, usually I just blind fire a little bit toward the enemies and get the in sync that way. And yeah, that makes it very strong. And in a second, we will have basically our second available btsu overcharge again. And we're going to make use of that, as I'm going to actually wait for it here and toss it out now. We have the btsu is completely off cooldown. We waited out that 2 minutes cooldown. I'm going to actually make one. I could have actually gotten two off of it, but I'm just going to choose to do one. I'm going to set out the hive again. The hive is also actually overcharged at this moment, so it's actually also dealing extra damage. And we got two overcharged seekers out in that moment again. And from here again, we're back to that normal rotation. And yeah, as you can imagine, trying to do this inside of a fight and hectic moments and stuff can be its own fun, as even here I'm not actually doing in sync well because I'm talking, of course. So what you would want to do is actually right before the seekers hit, make sure that in sync is at least up. Yeah, let me now take you into some missions, and we'll discuss it in some live gameplay, as here, of course, this is a perfect situation for it with these targets all bunched up together. But let's see how it does in some actual gameplay. Here I've accepted an invite for Air and Space Museum, and that could be actually a really good mission to show with this build, as it has a lot of packed spaces where we will fight enemies, and we are actually at the very start of it as well. But it also has a lot of places where enemies will be inside of doorways that we cannot go across the boundary of. So it has a little bit of everything for especially this build. I'm going to push in. My first seeker went out as I was rushing in. It didn't actually, it hit one person, two persons. And my second seeker is going out now after that hive. My hive's going in a position there where it will be able to hit everything that comes up from that ramp that is coming up from this side. So not the, if they don't jump up on the right side where you see those elites jump up. I'm going to deconstruct my hive, give myself a supercharge here, as I'm going to use that supercharge to get this seeker out. And then that should be this wave. No, something's still alive. I'm going to toss my hive there. That could be an eclipse, and that would be very nice here, but no, it didn't spread, so I know that that wasn't an eclipse layer. And yeah, that loot came from that chest up there. This is a wyvern zone, which might give us some decent loot. I'm going to push up to this door, and I'm not going to open it, but I'm going to inspect my allies and see what they are. So that is a jumbled mass, but for that 206, two drone hybrid kind of build and an Umbra build. Nothing too powerful, but enough to go through this mission. I'm going to get my seeker out. I'm going to try to time it that the explosion there it coincided well. So just as my seekers detonated, I actually got the charge off. Here I'm going to deconstruct my hive to get my seekers back. I'm going to toss out a seeker, trigger in sync, get a few damage out of it, and then hive goes back out. And I could have deconstructed again if need be to get another set of seekers. I'm going to go back here, grab this chest. This chest gets often forgotten, as people know about it. And there is a secret room here, actually, and I'm going to shoot the balloon. And that balloon, we're going to shoot 3 balloons, and that's going to open up a secret room for us. So that was the first one. I'm going to interact with objective. And I will show all 3 and actually show that room. It is one chest, one weapon utility chest, so the ones that drop a weapon and the mod. And yeah, well, you might as well get it while you're here. I'm going to actually push up with this guy, and hopefully he doesn't auto-engage really quickly. No, he's going to go upstairs to set up, so I'm actually going to wait for my allies. At the very earliest that he will engage is when he's up there. And I want them here to be bunched up like they are. My hive's going to go on top of them as well. I'm going to trigger in sync there. I'm going to actually toss a normal grenade over there. And that was just to, in case I am surrounded, I'm going to actually fall back here, heal up, and going to put my hive over there. Hopefully my allies deal with that one back spawn, one back enemy, as yeah, I do not deal well with singular enemies. Basically, I am here to weaken everything or kill a lot of the small things, and just assist in that way. And once in a while supercharge, giving red players their hive back and supercharge skills for a few seconds, and for skill players, for drone players, or for explosive build players or something, or eclipses, that will actually improve their output by quite a lot. So here we have that heavy. They did take care of him pretty well. I'm going to see if I can actually get the... So that is... These things are one good way of getting feature perfect, as you saw me do there. So I have actually... My hive is overcharged there, so that will do a ton of damage against these guys. As the hive does get extra damage from having... being overcharged, where, for instance, fire cam, the eclipse skills don't actually... So fire cam or something doesn't. I will take that mask and share it at the end for our ally if he is farming this place for Wyvern. Which he likely is. He was looking almost as if he was going for an Eclipse build, but didn't know how to put one together. Here's our second balloon, well hidden. It's blue on blue on blue, so it makes it hard to see. But that was our second balloon, and the third balloon comes later. I got pushed there a little bit, and that... I want to get my hive up there, as even though it did go after that enemy, it won't go after enemies a little more to the left of that, which I really do want to. Here, so here, my Seeker would not engage these enemies until they were outside of that room. But I was also saving my Seeker to deal with that wave. So, as you saw there, I made that wave a little bit easier. I'm going to use my hive here to deconstruct it and gain a supercharge. And the reason for that is that I'm waiting for that wave to spawn in. And instead of dealing with this wave, bye. And that is the power of this build. Sometimes for stuff like that, it can actually delete. So here again, I will likely do a ton of damage to these guys, weaken them by quite a lot. And as you can imagine, if this was, for instance, alongside of an eclipse, then yeah, that wave would be on fire. That wave would be then hit by me, damaged quite a lot, making them easy prey for my allies. I will also try to actually use my grenade launcher in a few seconds, as especially the door in the Mars rover room will be perfect for that. As yeah, the Seekers will not go over that boundary, but my grenade launcher will. I'm going to reload my shotgun, and we do only have actually one directive here active, which is Fog of War and nothing else. My Seekers are going to go over. I'm going to push in, wait a few seconds so my Seekers are getting close to explosion, and then my hive goes out. There's a chest back here. I'm going to just grab it now and just have it, also that my allies see it. I have a second Seeker. I'm going to dust that out. My cooldown of the hardware had elapsed there, so I'm going to deconstruct my hive. As I could have gone grabbed and tossed it again, but I'm just going to deconstruct it, have a third Seeker, and yeah, this is the rotation basically. I try to get some damage out, and then just basically go into the rotation and try to sneak in a few instincts as much as I can. My cooldown is down again, so hive goes out again. We grab this water as well, although actually I think this character might be full. And yeah, what I can't deal well with is these heavies, so I'm not really going to even attempt to. I'm just going to support my allies as much as I can by having this hive go out again. And the hive as well does CC a little bit, as enemies will go into that animation of just wiggling, and they will be combat ineffective at those points. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to actually put my hive there. I'm actually going to use 3 grenades here, as the spawn there happens all together bunched up as they were there, and the rest of it will hopefully get cleaned up a little by my Seeker. So for this first wave, I let them get out a little bit. My hive is going out now. I'm going to use that for a supercharge, as it is happening here. And yeah, so I have a few allies as well with turret and drones out, and that will benefit them quite a lot. I'm going to try and get an in-sync going. I'm going to grab my grenade launcher, and I'm going to try and sneak here and get this wave, especially. There we go. And yeah, as you saw there, I did a ton of damage. My hive is going. My hive is all the way back to 18 charges. I'm going to toss it out again. My Seeker follows that up, and actually we were already done. I'm going to deconstruct that Seeker, and what I'm going to do is not, of course, wait out its full duration. I'm going to put up my hive a second and just pick it. And the second I put my hive down there, it already reset. It triggered the hardwired talent, the feedback loop, and gave me my Seeker back. And that is fine, because it's going to be more than 10 seconds before all my allies are caught up to me here. Rushing in again and again. the same rotation. Seeker goes out. Here actually I'm going to wait till my Seeker's actually, that I'm pretty sure that I'm going to toss my hive down there. As with the bank headquarters, as I've shown a few times. Oh, they are shocked. They will not escape that Seeker, and that will do a ton of damage to them. I will actually take that CTAR as well. And my hive is there for the next wave that will spawn. So I basically already set it up that that wave will get deleted by that. And here I will show actually, so I'm going to jump back there. I'm going to get this first objective, and the last balloon is back there. So I've shot that balloon, and as you see, we even get the objective up there of enter the secret room, which, I mean, well, if the game asks so nicely, I will not deny it, and I will go and enter the secret room and get a baker's dozen. That was without good stats. I'm just going to drop it. We have one other weapon chest all the way in the back there, which I will actually go and grab. My ally grabbed that second objective, so we have 2 out of 3 done. And that third objective is right in front of me, and I will go and hit it. This will spawn a wave. What I would sometimes do is actually set up my hive first before I hit it, because I already see there's several... the turret, there's a turret here already, for instance, set up. And that means that I'm fine with that. I don't want to deconstruct my hive here, so I'm just going to actually let the hive deal a little bit of damage, because I want to save my supercharge for the boss fight. And this wave isn't consequential. It's not really anything that does any damage. I'm going to check if there's any loot back there. There isn't, so I'm going to grab pieces, see if anything's worthwhile, and move on with them. Yeah, as you can see, especially in this mission, so it is good for us, everything's packed. It is bad for us, a lot of things are inside of doorways. Actually, I wanted this one to have the armor kit. One thing here, the boss and the waves don't spawn until the last person enters this room. So I'm going to let them get set up, and then I'm going to go in. What I usually actually do with an Eclipse there is wait back there, and yeah, so they can get set up all the way. So my Seeker went out, first Seeker went out, my hive's going out, giving me my second Seeker. So here again, it didn't go over the boundary, but I'm going to supercharge, get my hive out again. I mistimed it a little, so I didn't get my Seeker the way that I wanted, but that is okay still, because I can still get a ton of damage out here. But yeah, both of my skill will not hit any enemies that are inside of doorways, but what will is my grenade launcher. And even though I'm hitting the boss as well, which it isn't a good target for it, so named enemies have reduced damage from all specialization weapons. They're by 30%, but I'm mostly going after the other things. And yeah, we still cleared that out pretty fast. Not as fast as an Eclipse would do, but it would actually be faster than just an Eclipse alone if I was alongside them. We got a few decent pieces, so I am actually going to go over here and drop those on the ground for my ally, as yeah, maxed out stats and such can be handy. There's also a key chest actually that one of my allies was going for in the background there, but I just want to drop this because I do quite often forget to do that. This isn't actually from this mission. This is from earlier. This is actually from an earlier mission, and there was also this LEOC. And hopefully the lowest level player there, that bike checkers guy, picks those up. But yeah, I'm going to actually quickly look at the damages, and I did do top damage here, but explosives, you can't trust the damage output here, as the overlap of explosives does actually bug out this damage value a little bit. But what you can look at is a little bit of the kill numbers. And we did decent. We helped move this mission on a lot more than if I was just another extra red build. As that is usually what these kind of builds are for. They're a little bit supporty. And in a second, actually, I will join you guys for another piece of gameplay where I will actually make this an Restorer Hive variant, as I do want to show that maybe as well. So I will see you guys for that in a second. And here I've altered the build a little bit to change towards having it be a or a restorer hive variant, a healing hive as most people call it. And what I've done is put repair skills into the 3 mod slots, and that's basically all I have done on the gear part of it. As you can see, those skill hastes have gone out. That means that our seeker is just above 30 seconds of cooldown now, so we do not get it back instantly. At times we eat up 30 seconds of this cooldown instead with the feedback loop, but quite often that those other 3 seconds you just deal with them that way. But what we have gained for that is that we now have a restorer hive instead of the aggressive stinger hive. And this we will use to heal our allies with, as we do heal up an ally to red without armor cores. We heal them up in 3 charges back to full. And we still have our seekers, which are our primary damage dealer. But we are giving up a ton of damage. We're gaining some healing in return. And we have diminished a little bit of our effectiveness of that feedback loop. But altogether, it is still a very viable variant. It can still be very effective, as healing can at times be quite useful to go through long fights. So this would actually sometimes be used in Legendary in the past for just slow boating through missions, through those Legendary missions. Doesn't get used as much anymore as, in the past. A lot of people would actually use drone builds and such for that more than we do now, where we the abilities that we've gained by having a little bit more damage, especially from expertise and from striker, especially that has come in, has made it a lot easier to choose to go red builds and just deal with legendary missions in just killing everything as quickly as we could. Yeah, I'm going to matchmake into a mission again and show you how this variant plays. Here I've accepted an invite for DCD headquarters, which I do believe could be invaded this week. I've done it already on this character, the invasion, I think, but yeah, so we have the normal variant. And yeah, this could also be a good mission to show here. The thing I did actually want to make a note of to say is that actually aerospace is a very strong mission for eclipses and explosive builds, so just to temper expectations a little bit, as otherwise if you think that that's going to be the output that this build can always do, then you might be a little bit disappointed, as it cannot. Especially in more spread out missions and such, it diminishes its effectiveness. I am going to actually go over here and shoot off that lock and go into this room and get this chest as well. And several of my allies also know it. One of my allies might actually be a foam eclipse. They're skilled. They have a booster hive, which isn't normally the skill choice for it, but this will also be a fast moving mission, so my hive is actually less useful here, as the hive is especially really handy for long fights. Those really long fights like you may have in, for instance, like the New York missions, the final boss fights, and most of those are pretty long missions in one area where you can get set up and have good output that way. I'm going to actually inspect my allies here real quick, as we have a Heartbreaker, we have an Foam Not Eclipse, and we have Strikers with Ninja Bag.
Looks like the best way to take the lab offline is the decontamination protocol.
The Foam will actually still be useful here, as actually a Foam Eclipse isn't the best pairing with this build, as they will actually foam a lot of stuff inside of doorways, and yeah, as we've discussed many times now already, that isn't actually really a good thing for us. But for instance, there, where they foamed that whole wave in place, I'm very thankful for them for doing that. I'm going to set out my second seeker, and this build is I'm putting my hive close to me here instead of tossing it out, of course, because it's healing. going to actually mistime it. But one thing I don't want to do here yet is to use it for a supercharge. I'm going to still go for instincts as well, of course. I'm going to pick it back up, wait for that cooldown of hardware to elapse, and that rusher was luckily not aggro to me. And just put out healing, put out a little bit of... and that healing does help a little bit. For instance, that ally got hit by that rusher that ran past me. From time to time, I will actually, of course, also use my overcharge, but I didn't want to do it there, as I expect several waves here to... for instance, there, I think I will only get that one enemy outside of it. Yes, I did. And yeah, not get access to the rest of it. Hardwire's coming off cooldown again. And yeah, as you can see, we've given up a lot of damage because, yeah, we do not have the Stinger Hive, which is a very strong, strong skill. But in return, we've gained some healing, but that isn't really helping us here because there's also a CC that is preventing damage in the first place. And that is the same reason, as I've discussed with several builds, why I prefer Eclipse over a lot of healing builds, especially nowadays, is that the Eclipse can prevent the damage from happening in the first place, and that can be a lot more effective. All of my allies have set up downstairs, which I do not know why they have chosen to do so, because yeah, the enemies are upstairs. I don't actually have any grenade launcher rounds yet there. But that is making us move pretty slowly through this mission, and Eclipse would speed this up a lot more than I am able to at the moment. Picking up my hive again, as I'm stumbling over my words. I'm going to actually set my hive down for a second and pick it back up to trigger that cooldown, just in case they do engage here, which that guy seems very intent on doing. So I will actually join them, triggering an in-sync as well, getting some healing out, waiting for... And there you saw that I tried to go for my Seekers right away, but there was like 1 or 2 seconds left on their cooldown actually still. And yeah, that can trip you up if you're very much into your timings. One thing is still alive here somewhere, and that is that guy. I do have grenade rounds now, so I'm actually going to use them here. And my allies aren't dealing any real effective damage here, and I don't want to... I want to use my Seekers on this next wave, not the wave we were on. And the foam is helping a little bit, but it's not an Eclipse foam, which would be 1,000 times more effective, as Eclipses are. Eclipses are just... There is no... I'm gonna go down... No, just made it. Yeah, Eclipses have... There's no real reason to go high-end anymore for CC. Eclipses just do it so much better, in the same vein that Hunter's Furies for SMGs just do SMG things so much better than any other build can, so it's it becomes an easy choice. There you saw me basically kill everything except that one purple. So all of the reds and such get cleaned up. And we're moving pretty slow. I'm actually going to give another quick inspect. So yeah, they were way too many blue cores. That was the reason. And yeah, that is not the way to do Striker. But they are likely leveling up their expertise for the ninja bag. I'm going to rush up into the back here where there is one chest that often gets forgotten. I'm going to grab that. And while we were moving pretty slow, we're moving pretty safe is also the thing, because we're in the cover of my healing. We will not easily die. This is more useful than, for instance, having a tank player or something be here. As, yeah, at least I provide healing. I provide a little bit of spread damage. I am actually killing stuff a little bit. I am actually going to... I'm considering I will actually use my supercharge here for this upcoming build, or this upcoming wave. And that also makes that hive a little bit more effective, the foam a little bit more effective. And most of the stuff will not be aggro to me, so I'm actually not that concerned to try to evade all of the enemies there.
I think the outcasts are using blood from an asymptomatic
And we're getting
carrier.
through here.
Someone who's infected but doesn't show symptoms.
Not fast, not great,
Right.
but
Weaponizing green poison and
I'm mostly still concerned with my rotation and trying to min-max my output by as much as I can. Even if my allies, if I had stronger allies, would go through here a lot faster. Just want to check weapons here as, oh, okay, they're using an overflowing and, because I hear a silenced weapon and that is, okay, that is on the striker and yeah, that explains the discrepancy in damage output and from my expectations and from what is happening. Also, that's fine. It's you random matchmaking, you get what you get. If you, for instance, what I quite often do is if I see that everybody that I'm joining doesn't have any real builds, or for instance that they have 5 directives but nobody is in the group that can actually deal with directives, then I will just leave. I do not take the time to hang around for that. As you can see, I am actually multi-inspecting as I'm trying to figure out like what they're thinking in the background of what's happening here. So here we have these 2 heavies. I really can't do much against them until the next wave spawns. So I'm actually going to go for the blood vats. Once this second one is destroyed, there, and one of the heavies is dead, then this next wave spawns, and that's what I'm going to set myself up to deal with. Although I see that heavy waddling towards me, I'm going to trigger an instinct there. I weakened that wave a little bit. I am actually going to supercharge here as the right wave has also spawned, and get that out, get my hive out, even though I did it a little bit too early, so it was the cooldown wasn't available yet, and but we still dealt with that wave. And yes, there is a chest on this right side here that we're grabbing, and we're moving on. But yeah, us having given up a lot of our damage for that healing is not working out really well for us here in this mission, where it's already an easier mission. But for instance, if this was the Arnell boss fight, or the ABC fight, for instance, in Wall Street, or Tidal Basin Last Room or something, there a build like this can be useful just to make it easier. Just if you already have enough damage, then having a little bit more healing can make it so that the red builds don't run out of healing, and they don't also have to spend time healing themselves out. They can just focus more on firing. So especially in this variant, we're a lot more of a support build, as yeah, of course we are, because yeah, it is a healer. Going to wait for the second wave to come out, and I'm going to actually swap to my shotgun in sync and trigger that. I'm going to expect my allies to deal with the rest. I'm going to hope that, oh, actually they foamed really well there, but again, the boundary of that door, so as you see there very clearly, I got everything outside of that boundary. I'm going to wait for my hardwired. I'm going to wait until the next wave spawns over where I'm aiming there. That will be basically once a few more things here die, which is hopefully now. And my seeker goes out. And actually I was one too early, which sucks for me. But I'm going to actually pick up my hive, drop down my hive, grab my seekers, and put them out. And also, yeah, the seekers are great for just showing my allies where all the enemies are. You get nice big red circles, even if they haven't been shot at yet and don't have those chevrons above their heads, then or the triangles above their head. Then yeah, it's still given away that where they are. And I'll just shotgun that guy. There is some loot here. I'm going to go grab that just so that the others already also see it along the way. So another relic. These do seem to drop a lot. Interestingly, a little bit more. At least to me, feelings-wise, a little bit more than they should.
Transfer initiated.
But I wonder if there is actually causality there, or if it's just I'm seeing that I'm confirming my own bias. I'm actually going to use my grenade launcher here just in case. And here where normally I would actually set up much further ahead and deal with this wave at their spawn. Here I'm not going to choose to do that at all because I don't have the damage output to do that. I'm going to pick up my hive again. Did it just a little bit too early. I'm actually going to wait for the next wave, and this is sometimes the play that you have to do with this build is use it. So there, if I trust mine there, I wouldn't be ready for this wave, and it's better for me to have it had it there for that wave. So it is kind of dependent on your knowledge as well. I am glass actually, so I am going to, just in case I was safe. We were out of combat. That is what saved me there. And I'm not actually going to jump down and grab that one piece down there because we actually took so long that, yeah, that fight took so long that we did actually run through the timer there, which I haven't seen in quite a while. But yeah, usually I am on an Eclipse here, or the more damaging variant of this build, if there's already an Eclipse in the group. The Seeker's going out, that's going to spread them out a little bit. I was expecting my allies to have already engaged, which there I did scatter them a little bit, which wasn't fully my intention. Hive goes out, I get another Seeker. I'm going to actually grab these flame rounds, that's why I came up here. And I am dealing a little bit of damage in the background, as you see. But it's not as much as the Hive variant. As the Stinger Hive variant, but of course. So here what I'm going to do is actually supercharge again. Once I tossed my Hive instead of my Seeker, which had me for a second very weirded out. I'm going to actually deconstruct my healer as well again, get another Seeker charge. I do have flame rounds on my shotgun, so I'm going to use that to keep some stuff in place. I'm going to hive out again, get my charge back, and help with dealing with this wave. If I had my Stinger, I could deal with this wave basically solo, as my Stinger would be there on the ground. I'm going to deconstruct my hive, get my Seeker back that way, and we should be done, I believe. Yes. And as you saw there, I was a lot weaker, so together with a group that wasn't putting out effective damage, even though they build-wise were maybe decent enough, they weren't effectively using their builds, which is also always a consideration. It's not just the build, the player behind it needs to also be competent and try to deal out good damage. As I'm pretty confident that even if I check now with this one, that I was either top damage or well, this is an outcast mission, so you can't trust damages at all. As you can see, one person overflowed. There isn't that much damage in this mission, and the other two here also were a little bit too high. But from the kill count, you can kind of guesstimate how effective each of us was, and it was mostly down to me, and I believe that was the striker player that was using a blue screen, but still did enough. And they were likely just mostly expertising up their gear, which is a common thing nowadays as people run off, well, even off builds, basically non-builds, just to level up expertise. So in a second, I will actually join you guys for the conclusion to this video. And to conclude this video, I hope I showed somewhat what this build is somewhat capable of, and especially how its rotation works, as it is very dependent on the player to get the most out of this build, as both having the mechanics of the btsu data gloves and hardwired itself, together with your hive and your seeker and trying to get in sync off and such. I find that quite enjoyable to try to get the most out of it. And especially if you are a player that also enjoys mechanic heavy builds and is fine with having running skill builds, then I highly recommend this to at least try out. And as I've said as well, this is a quite easy build to make, as the hardwired pieces are quite easy to get, of course. A btsu glove is easy to get and not even totally required. Even a China piece, of course, is yellow core. You can quite easily find it, or even if you run it with a Hanny U piece or a Wyvern piece, it will still do well enough. A capacitor is, of course, quite easy to get from Summit. And even an in-sync shotgun, you don't need it to be perfect. You just need, mostly you're using this just for this damage to armor and triggering in sync. So it doesn't need to be perfect for it to be usable. So that's also easy to grab. And it makes this quite an easy build to make and at least to try out. And I would always recommend to at least give this, get a taste for this build, get a taste of this build. And as I find it quite addictive, as I will quite often pull this out just to have some variety in the builds that I run, as especially together with a fire eclipse and 2 reds, it can actually, it can be for some missions, it can actually be the fastest group setup, as the fire eclipse, of course, is doing its thing. 2 reds are enough to deal with most of the heavies and such, and this build is helping everything along to go faster by giving supercharges, by doing heavy damage to all of the reds and such, helping delete them together with the eclipse. So it is actually a meta build in that sense. But yeah, it is also very much an acquired taste. You do have to learn it, and I find that quite fun to learn, to try to min-max and get the most out of it. It is fun for its challenge. And I hope I showed it well enough for you to at least consider making these, as especially also upcoming is Hollywood pretty soon, and Hollywood is always the Hollywood Global event, and that is very reliant on explosives, and explosives build do very well there, and this build is very good for there, and a mortar build is also, of course, very good for then. But both, I will be running both quite a lot during this global event, as especially there they are basically overpowered in that in the same way where red builds are overpowered in Golden Bullet. So I would highly recommend having at least one of these for those times at the very least. And yeah, they're quite enjoyable and quite easy to make, so highly recommend it. And yeah, as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. For my next video, actually, it will be several hopefully shorter videos. I will try to keep those actually short, not just by my standards, of the snitch, as I found that a lot of people still do not know how it works. So I do want to put out a guide on it, as I also know a lot of the background for it that I can share and make it an interesting video, hopefully. I'm also going to do a video on how I deal with looting and loot, as there is a few tricks that I feel might be useful to show to people, as specifically vendor sorting is very handy for that, and that is not a trick that everybody knows yet, so I feel it might be worthwhile to show that. And I'm also going to do a video, a rambling talk, another one, on 2 words that I'm hoping to delete from the vocabulary of the player base, as they often trigger me, as some people have found out through the years, and I hope to show well enough why I dislike them, those 2 words, and why I hope that if you watch that video, that you agree with me and no longer use those words. And yeah, those will be coming up, and the build masterclass for tech tanks is also coming up. The only thing that I'm mostly waiting for is for Summit's lag to be fixed, as if you're watching this in the future, currently it is those weeks where the Failau exploits mission, XP mission thing is active and Summit is quite unplayable. And that build is... I would feel I would do it a disservice if I didn't show it together with the Summit, as that is one of its homes, one of the places where it's super effective. So it is a little bit dependent on that before I finish that one off. It is mostly done. But if it gets delayed a little bit more, I will do more build showcases on other builds in between, as there are still many available in the collection. So yeah, I hope you join me for those. Have a good night.